All right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Things are good. Things are hectic. Can I make this bigger? That's what I want to know. Things are hectic, but because we're coming up on publication in like 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah,
So I'm
soon.
not sure when this will air, but
The week of.
November.
The week of.
Yeah, November 12th is coming up fast. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And how's it
yeah,
feel getting ready to put out a second book?
it's crazy. It's kind of surreal. Which way do I move that? How's that look?
Good.
It's kind of surreal. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal, but it's I mean it's tempered by the fact that my third one is due soon as well. So it's
Yeah.
I have
Now
the
now you're on the serious rotation where
yeah
you're
yeah
overlapping a little bit like everybody else is.
yeah. So I'm thrilled that the second one is coming out, but I'm also terrified that I have to hand the third one in. So
Right, because there's an unknown there. And I haven't put out a second book, so I don't know. But I imagine there's a little bit of unknown. Like, I'm going to put out the second book. I have to have the third one complete by the time the second one rolls out. Like, you wonder about the reception of the second one, let alone the reception of the third one, and it's all due right now.
yeah yeah,
I can't.
you're breaking up a bit there, Jeff. So
Am I? Sorry. I don't know why. What's going on here?
no, that's okay. I'm just checking things.
Yeah, so it just kind of makes me
I'm just gonna
wonder,
make sure
like,
things work.
it, I kind of wonder what that feels like.
Yeah. So I mean I had to have the second one in before I had any feedback on the first one.
Okay.
So I think you're kind of always in that weird biofeedback loop where you're not getting any feedback at all. So a book goes out, you hope it's good, but you don't know, and you're putting the next one out there. I think that's just some of the guys like Brad Thor. I'm sure Brad Thor, Mark Rainey, Jack Carr. Um, a lot of other writers are probably on a shorter timeline where they have maybe 6 months before publication. So maybe they've already got at least a couple of months feedback on their last one before the next one is due.
Yeah.
But I think most writers, and certainly probably most, newer writers, rookie writers, whatever you want to call us, are in that, 12-month lead stage where we're handing a manuscript in 12 months before it's going to be published. And the first one, of course, was 18 months, but
Yeah.
that was an already finished manuscript. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, we'll see.
But
The bottom
warm.
line is I've got feedback on the first manuscript already in terms of I know what people liked about Perfect Shot and what they didn't. So I was able to channel some of that into book three.
Hmm.
But you never. I guess the bottom line is you never really know.
Yeah.
So
Warm reception, the perfect shot though. It did great. You did well. I did you told me about your concept about getting into airports. Has that happened yet?
I don't know. I know that Hudson Books said they would pick up copies of the book, but I have no idea. I haven't heard anybody see one in an airport. But on the other hand, I was under the impression Walmart wouldn't carry any, and yet Walmart, I've been getting texts and direct messages from people in Illinois and Texas saying, actually, it was Taylor Moore who sent me a picture the other week of my book in Texas, somewhere,
Really?
wherever he was in Texas, whether it was up by him up in the Panhandle or wherever it was. Yeah, so
Okay.
I've been surprised by where they're being carried, and just like up here, Costco wasn't carrying them in the States, but they were carrying them right across Canada. So, I think we're the last to know, unless someone's sending me
Yeah.
a photograph of my book on a shelf. I'm not sure where it's going to turn up. So it's always exciting. I'm
Yeah.
just waiting for that airport one. I just want
Yeah.
to have the thrill of walking through an airport and terminal and checking it out and seeing if it's there. So one
Yeah.
of these days, maybe.
That's really cool considering not every airport has like a really big bookstore. Some of them have,
Yeah.
little shops, and some of them have a little more robust of a bookstore. But even then, the selection is limited, and they're carrying books that they know they're going to sell. They're by the big
Yeah,
names, so it's kind of a little bit of
yeah,
validation getting into one of the airport bookstores. Like you're sitting next to some of the big dogs for sure.
yeah. And I was told that Hudson, for instance, Hudson being one of the biggest airport
Yeah.
bookstore chains, I think they have over 500 outlets in North America, or specifically, I guess, in the U.S. And I was told they only take about 10 new mass market paperback titles a month, which, when you think about how many books are coming out and being put out in mass market and different formats, 10's not a lot. So
Not a lot at all.
so if it
50
is,
is not a
if it
lot.
does show up, it'll be thrilling,
Oh
but
yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, 10 a month. I mean, I bet there's thousands of books that are released every month, and they're only going to pick
Oh yeah,
10. Like
yeah.
that's
But Perfect Shot has been doing well. I mean,
yeah, it was
I
great.
was thrilled that sales have been good, and then I was surprised that it also received three literary award nominations. So it was a finalist for three literary awards. So that kind of blew me away. That was fun. Didn't win in any of the categories, but I lost to some good books. I.S. Berry's The Peacock and the Sparrow.
Well,
She took the yeah,
she's
like
been she's been bringing him
she's
home like she's checking out at a grocery store. Like,
she's cleaning up.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that's good to see, because it's a great book and Alana's a great
yeah,
person. So not so hard to lose to Alana.
yeah. How has it been this last like year being a debut author, Thriller Fest, BoucherCon, and really getting introduced to the masses and to the fans? How's that been for you?
It's been interesting because, I mean, first of all, it's been great, but it's also been kind of weird because I signed my book deal in 2021. I think it was 2022. So I had Thriller Fest in 2022, Thriller Fest 2023,
Hmm.
and then my book was published in November of 2023. So I'd already had two Thriller Fests under my belt where I was waiting for the book to be published. It was queued up to be published.
Yeah,
And then finally, this past summer, I was a debut author with a book actually out. So it was surreal. It was a lot of fun. Nice to finally have a book out and available for sale in the Mysterious Bookshop outlet downstairs of the hotel at Thrillerfest.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was fun to finally, you're anticipating that moment for so long, because the lead time between going out on submission, signing a book deal, and then it getting published is really close to 2 years.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
it was thrilling to finally be in you know, that club, the published club that I've been in waiting for. I mean, 7 years, is that a long time? I've been going to Thriller Fest since 2018. So on the one hand, is that 7 years? Whatever it is, seven Thriller Fest. So on the one hand, that's a long time, but on the other hand, we know publishing is a slow business for most. Very few hit that kind of rocket-like trajectory that
Yeah,
the big names do. So it was cool, grateful, always grateful, because you
yeah,
just never know.
yeah. Well, and you would think that it's weird how long publishing takes because you think it would be the opposite. You would think if they had a hot story that they really liked, they'd be like, "We got to pump this out. We got to get it out there." But they have such a schedule, and they obviously know more than I do because they have it figured out. But you would just think that it'd be a lot of urgency to it because they want to strike while it's hot. But that would be wrong.
Yeah, and I think what they do is, they take that urgency, and rather than channeling it into getting the book out there, they channel it into creating anticipation in the market,
Yeah,
right? So they get readers primed to want to see that book, and so the blurbs are coming out, and trailers are coming out, and advertisements and banners are coming out. So I think that's how they do it. And I guess they're lucky, and they count on we, as the reading public, are primed for that. We're used to that.
yeah,
And I think we want to get the next TJ Newman book because we know it's a hot one, or we want to get the next whatever. But we also know that it takes time.
yeah,
And lucky for us, we can pre-order,
yeah.
from
That's changed a
almost any
lot.
online channel.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
whether it's an
changed a
indie
lot over the
bookstore.
years.
Yeah,
You can get
yeah.
pre-orders
I mean,
so early now.
Yeah, and it used to be, I would back in the '90s and early 2000s when I was reading Nelson DeMille feverishly, and I waited for his next book. You actually didn't know anything about it because the internet wasn't the same as it is now. Um, you didn't have all these resources where you could track the next great upcoming book. So you just counted on, you knew he'd be releasing one every year,
Yeah,
and you think it might be in, summer or whatever it was, and you just waited. And then
yeah,
you get word either from a newspaper article or some other source,
yeah. Walk into your
traditional media
bookstore,
source.
see a banner
Yeah,
up there,
exactly.
new book coming out, and that's how you
Exactly. And
got
then
it.
you run up and you grab it and you buy it. Yeah, totally different now with the pre-order system. Lucky for us.
Yeah, well, and it's almost like there's almost a grassroots kind of promotion campaign amongst authors and bloggers and podcasters and the book reviewers that just seem to like it's so easy now to just I can just repost your when you put out your book tour dates I can just repost it, and then that goes out to all my audience, whoever it may be, and it's like you can just so easily support someone now, but in other words, it's flooded. Like there's information overload, so then you might not see that post for 3 or 4 days. My wife liked one of my posts on Instagram last night, and she showed me the picture. I was like, that was like 3 weeks ago. The
Yeah,
machine
yeah.
takes a while now, so it's convenient, but at the same time, you kind of go, man, it's flooded a little too.
Well, and that was one of the things, both as a lead-up debut and as a new debut. So the lead-up period where you're waiting for your first book to be published, then it gets published. You're kind of trying to figure out as you're writing your second book or whatever. You're trying to figure out how do I how do I how do I prime this machine? How do I play this game? Because you're new to the game, you're new to this publishing game, and you don't know exactly how the wheels spin and the levers move and all that. So you're trying to guess, what do I do next? Who do I talk to next? How do I build anticipation for my book? Because for the most part, the publishers don't do that part. For the most part,
Yeah,
they publish your book. They help you with certain social media campaigns, but they're not behind you. They're not Their role as publisher and publicist is not the same as a private publicist who's seeking out all these opportunities in traditional media, on television, in newspaper, in festivals. That's not really the role of the publisher these days anymore, unless you're one of the hottest commodities.
yeah,
So you, as a new author, in your first book leading up to that, and then subsequently once that book is published, to keep the momentum going on it, you've got to figure those things out yourself, the marketing side. And I got to tell you, as much as I love being published and having a book out, I, it's a love-hate relationship with the publishing side. I like social media to a point, but I hate the stand up and, hey, look at me, I have a book, go buy it. I don't like that self promotion side. I find that not really who I am. So it's difficult,
yeah.
and it takes some getting used to, but you got to do it.
Yeah, I didn't like doing it when my nonfiction came out, and I don't like doing it on. I really don't like doing it on the podcast either, just because I feel like I'm saying, "Hey, listen to my podcast," but I don't do the podcast for me. I do it for you all, the guests, and what you're doing, whether it's a business or a book. So I remind myself like I gotta be an advocate for them because that was the whole point in doing this. And the minute I don't want to be an advocate for people, then I need to stop. So, but self promotion is hard. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's something you can keep in mind, that you're doing it as you said because you're an advocate, and that's a great role. When you don't have that focus, when it's all about me, me, me,
Hmm.
I the what was the name of it just reminded me of that song by Red Solo Cup. Do you remember who the
Yeah,
country artist who
Toby Keith.
sadly just
Yeah,
passed away?
from
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
Toby Keith.
Yeah,
Yeah, that song that he has, that's all about me. But
yeah, yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going to sing the song for you, but it's all about me. And it's a hilarious song, but really, self promotion is all about me, and I hate that. And some people love it, and blessings upon them, etc. But yeah, it's a challenge for most of us, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about your road trip that you did recently. You got on the Harley and you took off for some serious miles, my friend. How was the trip? Where all did you go? Tell as much or as little as you want.
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, so the summary version, and then I'll get into some of the details. It was just under 6,000 miles in 3 weeks.
Oof.
My wife and I on the Harley. Um, we went from, we live in Toronto. So we went up around the Great Lakes and then back down Lake Michigan and stopped in Milwaukee to drop into the Harley Museum.
Oh, nice.
And while we were there, we had dinner with another Minotaur author, Hannah Morrissey, great writer. And then we headed across the plains, straight across to Rapid City, South Dakota. So that was 2 days from Milwaukee there. So we rode around the Black Hills. There's amazing roads out there. I mean, it was hot as heck out there.
Yeah.
The ride out, but just gorgeous scenery and gorgeous roads. And then we did the Beartooth Pass, which is an amazing mountain highway. Goes up to 11,000 feet. And you're dressed in a parka because there's snow all around you. And and you're looking at glaciers beside you and everything. So then into Yellowstone, down to Jackson, Wyoming, did some hiking in Jackson, then down to Estes Park in Colorado,
Oh, nice.
the Trail Ridge Road, Boulder, and then home. So it was 6,000 miles. The main goal being finding mountain roads to ride that we've ridden before and we want to ride again. So it was a killer journey. A lot of miles in the saddle, and God bless my wife. She's game for anything like that. And we had a blast. Fantastic scenery, fantastic hiking. Honestly, nothing beats, unless you're riding horseback, riding a motorcycle through the mountains is I mean, I love hiking. So anytime I can be in the forest is great. But I tell you, riding a Harley through a mountain forest and up the slopes and down and past, through the passes
Yeah.
and down again, it's an amazing, amazing feeling. And I hope I can continue to do it forever. So it was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Yeah. And if you guys are listening and you haven't checked out Steve's Instagram page, he posted a bunch of pictures along his way. You need to go back and check it out because he posted some really, really beautiful pictures. If you love the mountains, I know I do. When we lived in Colorado Springs, the front of our house faced west. So right at Pikes Peak, right at the Rocky Mountains. So when you walk down the stairs every morning, big picture window that you could see the peak every day. I never realized how much I took that for advantage until we moved back to Oklahoma, and now I just see my street.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I've been there. Lynn and I rode up Pikes Peak about 10, 12 years ago
on the bike?
on it. Yeah, on the Harley.
Wow.
Yeah, went up Pikes Peak, spent time in Manitou Springs, then in Colorado Springs,
Yep.
did a tour of the Air Force Academy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we've done a lot of riding well, Colorado is one of our favorite states.
Yeah,
Sorry to anybody who's not from Colorado, but it's an amazing state. So many,
it
you've
is.
got a diversity of scenery, right? You've got the north where you've got the Rocky Mountain formations, and you just got mountains everywhere. I mean, but the character of the mountains changes from north to south and even east to west.
Yeah.
So we've ridden the $1 Million Highway in the south. We've been to Durango, and
Wow.
we love Colorado.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow.
And Boulder was awesome. I mean, riding the Boulder, is it the Boulder Canyon? I guess it's called. Riding the Boulder Canyon was I did that 3 times. Once just to get from where we were in Estes Park down into Boulder,
Hmm.
and then the next day I dropped Lynn off so she could do some shopping in Boulder, and I did the Canyon Road twice just to do it again because it's just an incredibly scenic canyon highway. A lot
Yeah.
of fun, beautiful area.
Oh yeah, we went into the mountains for Father's Day one year when we were there, and we went into this little town, had a little brewery there, had the best homemade pizza and chicken wings I've ever had in my life at
Nice.
this little brewery that was built like in a barn. I mean, it didn't look like nothing when you drove up to it. Fire pit sitting outside, some rocks laying around. You could tell they had a live band there every now and then, but I mean, it was in the valley. Pikes Peak was
Yeah.
over here, the rest of the mountains were over here, and there's nothing in there. Fantastic, fantastic pizza and wings, and they were just super nice. And it's nice to go do that. I really wish we could move back because it was so. And I would live in the mountains, so I would say, move us in. Let's move in there somewhere small town and just enjoy it because The mountains are the most beautiful thing. I love them so
Yeah,
much. They're gorgeous.
yeah, I agree. I'm always torn between lakes, ocean, and mountain. I mean, who doesn't like that, right? It's
Mhm.
if I could live on a lake, on a mountain, in a forest, staring out over the ocean, that would be perfect.
Yeah, right.
So
We need to build that. Let's figure out how to do that because yeah, you always say, oh, it's so nice. You go out there like we complain about it in the summer here. It'll get up to like 105, 107 with the heat index here. We're like, oh, it's so hot. It's nice to have a pool. We jump in and out of it, and then the winter comes. We were complaining about the heat. Now we're complaining about the cold.
yeah, always. Yeah,
You can't get that mix. People who live in Florida probably love it, and then there's always the threat of hurricanes and you know.
yeah, yeah.
So, Perfect Shot came out a year from now, just about. I said it was cinematic, the way you wrote the first couple of chapters, let alone the whole book, but the first couple of chapters really just, man, I could just see it. I could see it unfolding, the whole thing, helicopter scene and everything. That really relies on a lot of your experience as a tactical medic and some of the operational experience that you have had. What did you really put into Out in the Cold that kind of came from your experience in molding that story?
Yeah, I wanted to come up with another scene at the beginning that was I love grabbing the readers at the beginning. I love a high action sequence in a movie. I love it in a book. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you can go on too long, and I cut a lot of pages out of Out in the Cold, the first section, because I think I went on, I don't know, 80, 90 pages initially, and I cut it back, change it up a little bit. But I like to bring in those high action sequences. Um, a few years ago, so as you mentioned, it takes place on the water and specifically on the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Nice and Monaco. And a few years ago, Lynn and I and our daughter and her now fiance visited that area. And it's a beautiful area.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever been there, it's incredibly scenic. Again, like we talked about, there's some mountain slopes. The Alps slope down into the sea. You've got that one peninsula that I mentioned, the Saint Jean Cap Ferrat is there. And then you have Monaco, which is a little further over, which of course is a little tiny principality that's great for setting espionage thrillers in, Bond movies, etc. It's just a cool area.
Yep.
So when I saw that and I could picture the blue water and the rocky shore, and of course the luxury yachts, I really wanted to set a scene there.
Yeah.
So as I do, I kind of took that to the nth degree and upped it a little bit and ramped up the action and got some boats involved and some
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for Alex to get on the gun. So, a lot of that again, I draw on some of my tactical knowledge, but I was never a tactical operator the way Alex is. But I got to work with a tactical team and support a tactical team in the medical side of operations. But I'm a boater. I love boating. I love swimming. I love the sea. I could picture everything about that mega luxury yacht that they find themselves on. I could picture myself on that.
Yeah.
And then the rescue scenes or the chase scene that took place after that was just fun to write. And I got to write. It's interesting because the one boat I mentioned, actually, there's two, a smaller one and a larger one. There's a boat manufacturer in Finland called Axopar. And interestingly enough, Brad Thor, I haven't read Shadow of Doubt because I'm trying to finish my third book before I read Shadow of Doubt.
Mm.
But Brad Thor recently put out a gear guide. And I just realized that he uses or references pretty much the same boat in Shadow of Doubt that I used in Out in the Cold. It's purely by coincidence, of course. It's an Axopar boat made in Finland. And when I was writing Out in the Cold, I got a hold of the manufacturer and actually flew to Finland and Helsinki to visit Helsinki for, as you know, Out in the Cold is set partially in Helsinki.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went up there, I met with the manufacturer, one of the representatives, who took me out on the Baltic Sea in an Axopar boat. So I got to run around the sea in one of the same boats that I
Getting your
feature in my
hands
story,
on. I love that
hands
hands
on.
on. That's really
And
cool.
it's such a cool boat. If I had a place and if I had the money, I would love to have one of those Axopar. This one was the Axopar Brabus Shadow Ops 900 or something like that, some incredible name to denote the, the crazy capability. It's a super fast
Mm-hmm.
luxury cross cabin speedboat. It's not a luxury cruising. Well, like it's a cruising day boat too, but I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like a mega yacht you're hosting parties on.
No, right.
It's a 37 footer. It's meant to bomb across the Mediterranean, Spain, France, Portugal, Monaco. It's just a gorgeous, fast boat.
Yeah.
So that was the hands on I brought to the story, brought to Out in the Cold this time.
Well, that's pretty good hands on right there. I mean, you can't beat
Yeah.
flying
Well,
over and hanging out with the manufacturer for the day. That's cool.
it was surreal riding a boat around the Black Sea or the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, because I write about it. And of course, I've known, you know your history, your geography. It's such an important region of the world. And of course, it's really an important region of the world now with Finland having just entered NATO,
Yeah.
Sweden just having entered NATO. It's a lot of the stuff going on is going to happen in that area of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the risks, that's where the risks are. And that's why even before those things were making front news headlines or front page headlines, I was trying to imagine what those things might look like. And that's why I came up with the plot line I came up with for Out in the Cold.
Yeah, let's talk about what Alex is up against this time around. Book starts off with a big boat scene, big car chase scene. It's based on that part of the world, like you were talking about. But what's Alex up against this time around?
So there's things happening both on the boat, as you know, and no one knows exactly why things happened on the boat the way they did. And then obviously things, Alex goes back to CIA, back to Langley with Caleb, and they have a meeting with their boss, the assistant deputy or the deputy director of CIA. And meanwhile, things are happening up in the Baltic region. Stuff's been happening in Finland where these bad things have been going on. There's been a lot of sabotage linked, people believe, to Russia. And, as in the first book, everyone's wondering, is it the GRU again? Is it FSB? What Russian, nefarious agents are wreaking havoc in Finland? And are they doing it to stir trouble and stir the pot in NATO? Because, it's counterproductive, but that silly Russian president, now I don't mention Putin in my book, but it's a very Putin-like president
Mm-hmm.
who's very egotistical and megalomaniacal and just a general poop disturber. Is he the one doing things to stir things up in NATO to create discontent? So, of course, America has to decide how to respond to these threats because, is this going to be an Article 5 intervention required as would be called for under NATO? So things are ramping up, and both sides, both America and the West and Russia, are ramping up towards a response, towards a conflict. And Alex is called upon to try to figure out what actually might be going on behind the scenes, because maybe things aren't exactly as they're portrayed. So she, for various reasons, I don't want to give too much away, but she finds herself back over in Europe pretty quickly. And then she's pulled into the action and is put on the trail essentially of what's going on in Finland, and helps to bring a successful conclusion to that particular series of events and incidents. So obviously I'm being a little coy with what's going on because I don't want to give too much away. It's different in a way. The first book was more about a ticking time bomb, literally in perfect shot.
Mm-hmm.
This one's more about a conspiracy, not for conspiracy nuts per se, but everyone likes a good conspiracy because there's conspiracies everywhere, which is why conspiracy theories are so easy to grab onto these days because they're almost believable most of the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That there could be someone behind them. I mean, you look at stuff going on today. Just the other day, I think there were 4 arrests or several arrests made in Poland. And they're looking at Russia as a bad actor wanting to send bombs overseas to Canada and the United States, as well as other countries in Europe. And these are Russian bad actors that are behind this plot, it's believed, to do this only to stir up, crap and to harass the West and make people essentially feel less secure than they do. So those are the kind of ideas I like to put into the story. And those are kind of the kind of ideas that went into determining what kind of conspiracy I would create in Out in the Cold.
When you write, and this is a question you're giving advice to other authors, debut authors, people who are trying to get published. When you write, how many details are too much details? Where do you get that fine line where you go, okay, this is not irrelevant. This is not relevant to the story. Like maybe there's a passport thing. Like, oh, how did they get into back into the country? Do you skip that? Do you elaborate on it? Where does Steve have that line?
It's easy. My wife tells me.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, as a writer, and I've said this before, and I'm just slowly getting used to this. I mean, this is including the first manuscript I wrote that didn't get published. This is now my fourth manuscript that I'm writing. So my third going to be published in the Alex Martel series. And I've had to get used to the notion to filter myself less when I'm writing,
Okay.
but edit myself strictly when the time comes. So, but it's still, it's still a juggling act because you do a lot of research to inform yourself in a way that you understand the material so that you can inform the reader.
Mm-hmm.
But the danger when you do so much research is you want to take that stuff you learned and dump it all into the story.
Right.
So you have to be disciplined enough and you have to be practiced enough to not do that part. But you have to also be unfiltered enough to let the stuff get into the story so you're not getting in your own way of censoring and editing your own material.
All right.
So,
All right.
it's a fine line and it's hard to find that balance. So when I'm writing, I try less to find the balance, but I try to find it when I'm editing. And I was only kidding a little bit. I mean, literally, Lynn is my first reader. My wife, Lynn, is my first reader. And she's a college professor and she's got a big red pen.
Oh.
And she'll stroke through sentences or paragraphs to say, no one gives a hoot about,
Right.
what kind of powder was used in that bullet. No one cares. Call it cordite. No one's going to care. So she, for one, is a huge asset in terms of editing the material down if I put too much in. But I'm also getting better myself at knowing in the editing stage what's just enough. And really, I suppose the magic point is if you find your description of things taking you as the reader or taking the reader, and when you're editing, you're your own reader. If you find your detail and description taking you away from or out of the action, that's got to be cut. You want to, if you're suddenly eating a sandwich and you describe how great the Black Forest ham was and how well the Dijon mayonnaise and mayo blended to, or Dijon mustard mayonnaise blended together, probably you don't need that kind of detail during a car chase. Maybe he's one-handing it on the wheel, biting a sandwich. That's all the reader needs to know. They don't need to know what's on the sandwich. And I think that really probably is a bad analogy, but that probably sums up what it is as a writer you need to do as you're editing is pull out this. What did somebody say? Oh, I'm going to blow this quote now, but I was just reminded of the quote. Put everything in that the reader wants to read and take out all the stuff that's not interesting. Someone said that, or it's a paraphrase, and it's a really bad paraphrase job, and I apologize to the writing gods, but essentially that's it. Write everything you want, take out all the stuff that's not interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember. Somebody said it at BoucherCon too during one of the panels I was sitting in, and it was something like that. But basically the point is take out the stuff that doesn't matter. Like even down to the nth degree of does it matter if it's a 9mm or a 45? Does it matter? Like it does it matter that it's a Glock or does it matter that it's a pistol? Because if you call it a Glock and you say you flipped off the safety, you're gonna have people coming after you. If you just say pistol though, like what relevance does the word Glock have as opposed to pistol? So in your case, the sandwich, he's biting a sandwich. How important is what's in the sandwich in the middle of a car chase or in the middle of a tense scene, or if they're in a restaurant trying to lay low and just observe? How important is that? Like that's a very distractive detail, I would say.
Yeah, and sometimes it's important, and it's important because if you know your audience and you're writing for a particular audience, maybe gun guys or gun girls are reading your stuff, and they want to know, is it a Makarov? What kind of Is it an armor-piercing bullet in the Makarov, or is it a Glock, or is it a is it a Kimber Mako, or what it is, whatever it is. Sometimes people care about that, but there's a time and place for that, and I'm trying to
Yes.
get better at figuring out where that line is between keeping it going and sharing the fun details that some readers really like to see. Just as an example, Perfect Shot. When I finished Perfect Shot and didn't hand it in initially, but when I first showed it to my agent, it was 134,000 words. When the printed version is 104,000 words.
Hmm.
So I edited out 30,000 words, which is about 120 pages roughly,
That's a lot.
to get it to where it is today. Yeah, and it was because I was a new writer and I wanted to get stuff in there.
Yeah.
But when I reflected on it, and when my wife reflected on it, and my agent reflected on it, it was like, no, you could take out more, you could trim it back, make it tighter, make it leaner. And we know that in writing, tight writing and lean writing is fast writing. We're fast reading, right? People want to read and keep turning the pages.
Yes.
If the writing is tight and the descriptions are lean, it just makes it for a much better, faster story with more more tension and more action.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what I'm aiming for now, and I hope I'm starting to get better at it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I loved Out in the Cold, and like you said,
Thank you.
we're not reading 700 and 800 page door stoppers that Clancy did in the early 90s, in Rainbow Six and some of those other ones that were just, I mean, 3 or 4 inches
Yeah,
thick. I mean, you can't. There was a time and a place, I think, for that style of writing. I don't. If Clancy was alive today, I don't know if he would be able to get away with that. I think he could, but maybe not to the degree that he did in the 90s. It would have had to have evolved because, I mean, my wife has books that are 600, 700 pages in like fantasy, in some of those
right.
other genres. I think
Yeah,
you can get away
yeah,
with it over there.
yeah,
In military espionage, these operational kind of books, it's action, so people expect to read fast.
yeah,
And 300-page books for some people is a commitment. Let alone
yeah,
400, 450. So, um,
yeah. Tom Clancy writing those books. Absolutely no disrespect to Tom, because that
oh
was the
no,
writing of the day. And he was at the very summit of the best techno thriller writer. I mean, he invented the genre
yeah,
essentially.
absolutely,
And his books are legendary and obviously still being enjoyed today in their newest iterations. So, yeah, but even Tom, I mean, you say he might not get away with it. He wouldn't even try, I'm sure,
yeah,
these days,
you're
because
probably right.
I'm sure, and of course I can't speak for Tom because I didn't know him and he's no longer with us, but he would recognize, I'm sure, that the marketplace has changed, and that no, the attention span of readers, because of everything else they have to choose from, is much less than it used to be. So very few writers can get away with writing books the length of Without Remorse and things like that, which are classics to this day, but they're not
Fantastic
easy to
books.
get through when you try to read them again, just because we've moved on, and our attention span is much less, and we want a quicker read.
hmm And I think that's
Something half like.
a natural maturation of the business and of the genre, and I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah, and again, like you said, no disrespect to Clancy at all. I mean, I've read Rainbow Six again in the last like year and a half. I've read it. Like it's just one of those books where I don't care. It could be 1,000 pages long. It's the story. You're going to get back into it. But today's readers, people are picking up books today. You know, you do have to evolve and change a little bit. And we'll get back to Out in the Cold. Um, what are you going to do book tour wise? Like this episode's going to come out the week of it being launched. You got a book tour planned this year, I understand?
Yes, so I'm still planning some final events up here in my neck of the woods, but I have, for the week after publication, on November 19th, I'll be in Houston at Murder by the Books,
Nice.
with an author named Chris Mullen. November 20th, I'll be at the Poison Pen with Jack Stewart.
Awesome.
Then I move on to Tampa, and on Friday the 22nd, I'll be appearing on Tampa Bay Reads, a television program segment on Fox 13 News with Linda Hurtado Bond. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And we're trying to tie in another bookstore or two into that Tampa piece as well. So right now it's just the three stops and maybe a couple more added. But yeah, they'll be fun because the Poison Pen, Murder by the Books, two iconic mystery thriller shops. Absolutely. So looking forward to those events, and it'll be fun to get down to Florida and sit and chat with Linda on her noon. It's a noontime show, live show at noon. So that'll be fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So right now, that's the scale of it. Whether we'll add any more stops along the way, before or after, not sure yet. We're still trying to figure that out.
Well, there you go.
But meantime, I'm doing a number of podcasts as well. So thank you for having me, Jeff. It's always fun to be on your program.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the book you sent me early. I got to read it ahead of time, which is, I always love reading Mad Times because I can sit here and talk to you guys about it and get in the weeds and help promote it the best. But it's just an honor. I appreciate you thinking of me and
no worries, my pleasure.
One last question before I let you go. What is kind of in the works for the third book? Can you give us a little bit of a teaser without spoiling too much? Don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I don't want to get myself. Yeah, I probably won't get myself in trouble. But after the events of Out in the Cold, Alex finds herself taking a bit of a recreational holiday with her dad in Africa, and they're doing a safari together. We introduced readers to her dad in Out in the Cold, very briefly, but we get to know him a little more intimately in book 3. General David Martel is a former U.S. Army general, very prominent U.S. Army general. That's her dad. So Alex comes by her skills honestly, the old-fashioned way, through dad and mom, etc. Her mom was a doctor, dad was a general, and so she finds herself in Africa on a safari. And all I'll say is things go awry, and from there, Alex has to spend the rest of the book hunting down some bad guys. But I can't give away exactly what they're up to right now.
Okay. What was the inspiration for Africa?
Well, my wife said that I can only write books for places we've been or places she wants to go. So we did a safari to Tanzania in 2019. So, one, it's an amazing continent. Mm-hmm. Tanzania is an amazing country. And of course, Africa is at the center of so much geopolitical intrigue and action right now, whether it's the former Wagner group wreaking havoc or China involved in activities down there. There's just a lot of political intrigue happening, a lot of instability. It's a beautiful country with lots of stability, but there's also a lot of instability and conflict going on. So one, I've been there, so I get to draw upon my experiences in Tanzania and on safari. And I get to write that kind of detail into my story. And it just creates a neat backdrop for the reader.
Yeah.
So shaking it up between, of course, there's scenes set in Africa, but there's also scenes set in the home front back in Langley as well. So it should be an entertaining read for readers again.
I was doing some research, it was probably a month or so ago, about Africa. I was writing a scene based in Africa. I was just doing some random research, and I saw some Chinese involvement in Africa, and I just started digging a little bit more, and I was blown away by the amount of not only influence but business that China is doing in Africa. So there's your homework for those of you who are listening. There's your homework. Go do some research on Africa so that you're prepared for Steve's third book and you'll really be in the know, because I was blown away by what China is doing in Africa.
Oh yeah, China, Russia, everybody else wants their fingers in the pie. So.
Couldn't believe it. It was shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, Steve, before I let you go, tell people where they can go find more about you, follow you on social media, and get a copy of both Perfect Shot and Out in the Cold.
Yep. So which hand am I doing here? There we go. So Perfect Shot and Out in the Cold are right back there. And Out in the Cold is here. And for information, you go to steveurszenyi.com. So that'll take you to my website, steveurszenyi.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter /X and Facebook and everywhere as Steve Urszenyi, at Steve Urszenyi. So yeah, and I'm happy to, I love actually getting fan mail or reader mail. It's fun to read what people have to say. Usually it's constructive. Sometimes it's fun when it's not always fully constructive, but I do love reading. I do love getting email from readers. It's fantastic.
So there you go. Contact Steve. Go pick up a copy of Out in the Cold and enjoy.
Peace.
Steve, best of luck. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate the book. And Out in Cold's going to kill it. I know it will.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, Jeff. Really appreciate it.